Welcome to the Other Side Pod. I'm Nadine. We're not experts, we're just humans having a human experience we think you can learn from, or relate to, or laugh at, or cry over. So hit download, dive in, and hear how folks found themselves on the other side.
Okay,
Ready?
I'm so ready.
I'm so ready. We're recording. Fraser,
Nadine,
what is your favorite meal you've made this past month?
French fries in my air fryer with mayonnaise.
Oh my God, I do love dipping French fries in mayonnaise. Oh my
I
God.
got mayonnaise with the horseradish aioli, and it's delicious. It starts with a D and it ends with delicious.
Love. Okay, do you prefer French fries as like the white potato or a sweet potato?
I like both, but I find that the sweet potato ones can get a bit soggy, so I kind of prefer the white potato.
Okay, we're here to talk about French fries, but also retirement. Dun, dun, dun. I don't know how to put in sound effects, so I'm making them myself.
Yeah, you are one big sound effect.
We have been friends for 1,000 years, actually just two because we're babies. And you're close to retirement. So I wanted to hop on because ever since I've met you, you've been a very highly motivated, driven, very successful public servant. And I was curious how it looks to go from being someone that was so thoughtfully, strategically planned out career wise to someone that's looking at the other side of your life in that way. Just tell me everything.
Tell you everything. Well, I don't know that I have all the answers, to be honest, because I'm still thinking that through myself. But I have kind
Hmm.
of come to the more than the realization, like the acceptance, the understanding that I'm at a point now in my life where I'm thinking a lot less about what comes next on paper and more about like the ways that I want to contribute in a way that's both meaningful and sustainable, which isn't to necessarily suggest that I didn't do that in my job, but I'm I'm looking forward to whatever the next chapter in the journey are.
I want to go back to baby Fraser because I know this story. When you were a little kid on Sundays at your dinner with your mom and dad, your dad would ask you what?
He would ask me the same two questions just about every week, and he would ask what I had accomplished in the week that had just happened and what I was planning to accomplish in the week that was to come.
And I think I'm assuming that set you up for the person that I got to know because you are very purposeful with how you've set up your professional life. Did that really have as much influence that I think it did?
It had a lot of influence for sure on how I think about myself and the world, and you know, I every Sunday I still do that to myself, whether I was in school, which I was in school for a long time, or whether I was working. But I don't know that those questions drove me with respect to my career in the public service. It's more it drove the way that I organized how I think about my work and myself in my work.
Okay, in what way?
I thought of it more as like a scheduling thing than an ambition and goals thing. Like with respect to my father in particular, I had an uneven relationship with him, but certainly my career, when I joined the public service, I right from the outset knew that I wanted a long career, and that's one of the benefits about the federal public service is that you can spend your entire working life pretty much in the system. And so I wanted to do that, and I wanted to do it because I wanted to ground myself, I guess, in public purpose and in stewardship. Like I believed really strongly in importance of the public service, not just in delivering services to Canadians and supporting the government, but actually in ensuring that democracy is stable, because it is the institution that ensures there's continuity between elections. My motivation was not really titles. Like I didn't ever aspire to be like an ADM, an assistant deputy minister, but I did aspire to build institutions or to contribute in building institutions that work for Canadians. And I would say I had uneven success.
So when you were a little kid sitting at this dinner table, were you ever thinking about that? Were you interested in politics or were you thinking about something different?
When I was in
What do you want
high
to be when you grow up?
school, I thought I would be an ophthalmologist. I think mostly because I thought it sounded cool. Then I realized
Yeah, what can you say? What was an ophthalmologist
an
again?
ophthalmologist is like an eye surgeon. And then I understood that you need to do really well in maths, and I didn't, so that didn't work.
And do surgery on an eyeball?
Yeah, I know it's kind of weird. Although I had that surgery, so I'm very thankful for those people.
Yep.
And then I thought I'd be a minister, a United Church minister.
Wait, pause. Did not know this about you. I'm shook. Say again, you thought you'd be a.
United Church minister. Well, I didn't. I mean, it was one of the careers that I mused about.
Can you say more? Why?
Um,
What drew you into that?
well, I was really active in the United Church my entire life. Both my parents were active as well in the church, and so it was an environment that I knew and understood and felt supported. And I did a number of different things, and I enjoyed public speaking. I always have, and that situated me well for um, my public service career. So I knew that would play into it. And then I guess the last thing is that there's a scholarly element to it, and that's always appealed to me. So yeah, that's kind of why.
Cool.
And also, I guess I should say
How
like
long
the
did.
whole community piece. Like there's like the community. So
Yeah, it's really beautiful. How long did that one last? Thinking that you would be.
once I got into university, I mean it's like my growing up years are kind of defined by some really definitive moments in my family. So my father died when
Mm.
I was 20. So I was in the beginning of third year university. So first and second year, I was just having a good time. And then after my father died, I got pretty serious about school, and I think it was a way that I coped, and I put my head down and I did 3 degrees, one after the other.
I can't imagine. Look, I've had a lot of fun with you, many, many a good time, but I can't imagine you not taking something seriously. So before your father died, those first couple of years university, were you easier on yourself? Were you relaxed, so
Yeah,
to like, or were you studious? But
I was much more carefree, I would say, for sure. I was really exploring in those years. It was less about academics and more about like interpersonal relationships with both men and women. Because in high school, I didn't really do that. I didn't really date in high school, and I was kind of I wasn't like the odd kid out, but I was sort of like the kid that all of the cliques would talk to. Um, but I didn't really like participate in any of the cliques. Like I used to do the morning announcements every day. I was the yearbook
oh my
editor.
God, of
I
course.
was a tutor. Like I did that kind of. I was in the band. I played the French horn. I did that kind of stuff.
Cute. I played the flute.
Of course you did. I was gonna say. I thought you
What?
strike me as like an oboe person.
Okay, here's why I played the flute. I tried out for band because I learned that you got to skip classes. And I was like, excellent. I'll do this. And so I auditioned, I don't know, I think I was in grade six. And the band director said, as after my audition, he said, what instrument do you want to play? You're going to die at this. I go, what sits in the front row? He's like, oh, the flute. I'm like, done.
Yeah. Yep. This is the world. This is Nadine. Do you want to see a
Oh, it's
picture of me
not.
in band?
Yes, I really do. What sits in the front row? I had a good time up there in the front row. Oh my God, stop. You're adorable. Is that shiny? Is that a shiny blazer?
It's polyester. I know
That
that. It
mustard?
was like a Century
Oh my
21
gosh.
jacket.
Oh
It
my
was the
gosh.
80s.
I know. Listen. So you were okay. So you go to university for what? Like first year, do you declare a major or
Yeah, I
minor?
wrote in my yearbook, in my grade 13 year, my ambition was to study political science in university, and that's exactly what I did.
Huh. Where'd you go? Remind
I
me.
went to Carleton.
And then your dad died halfway through,
Hmm.
and then you kind of felt like that was a bit of a turning point for you to be like really focused or more focused than you were on your studies.
Yeah, I think so. I remember thinking like I need to take care of myself now. Like my mom,
Mm.
my dad was 61, my mom was 56, and he had just retired, so my mom got like a survivor's pension, which is much less than the full pension. So I knew that there wasn't kind of money and stuff. Like I needed to make sure that I did well, and I worked every summer and I worked during the year as well. And it paid off because I won scholarships for my graduate degree and my doctorate.
Oh, you won scholarships in your undergrad.
No, not my undergrad, my
Huh.
graduate degree and my doctorate.
Oh, okay. Sorry. You applied in your graduate and your doctorate. So what did you do in your graduate degree?
I did a master's in Canadian Studies, which is an interdisciplinary program. And the reason I did that was because after my father died, he died of Lou Gehrig's disease. I had a prof suggest to me that I take this disability law course, which I did in my fourth year, and it opened up for me a whole language that I had not really ever encountered before, both with respect to understanding disability, but about equity and equality. And so I ended up
Mm.
doing my MA in Canadian Studies because I focused on disability and disability policy and disability movements.
Oh, wow. So did you go directly into your graduate degree from
I
undergrad?
did. Yep.
Also at Carleton?
Yep.
And then that was a 2-year program, I'm gonna
It was a
guess.
2 year program, and I took 3 years to do it because I actually got pneumonia in my second year. I also came out in the first year of my,
Mm,
well, at like fourth year and then the first year of my graduate degree.
mm.
So that was again, another really formative period for me. But I married my academic work and life more broadly.
So did coming out during those years affect what you decided to study? Like, did that affect the, I don't know, the classes, the groups,
Yeah, it did. It
I
affected,
mean,
I mean, I was a young, engaged, I was going to say well-read, but like I was keen to read about like the feminist movement and the Black Panthers. And like I really wanted to understand how equality emerged and became defined in Canada. And so I was
mm,
surrounded by people who were doing that kind of work, mostly feminists, mostly lesbians, actually. And a lot of them profs or graduate students, like PhD students. I was always kind of like, I always hung out with the crowd like ahead. So like in my undergrad in first year, I didn't eat with my floor. I ate with the graduate students. And I don't,
why do you think?
I never really could relate to folks. I won the Counting the Days Till You Get Out of Here award in first year in my residence program.
Really?
But the irony is I
Why did
met my
you?
girlfriend there. So anyway.
Well, like, why would they think you wanted to get out? Did you? Were you counting down the
Oh
days?
yeah. Well, it was 1989 and I was having sex with another guy and his roommate walked in on us. And in 1989 that was a big deal. The guy freaked out and the guy I was with left the university because we got harassed so much. And the university, their suggestion to me was that they put security outside my door, which I
Mm,
declined to have. But it's amazing how much things have changed just on the topic of equality. So I
Wait, can I just say that that story, I know it, and it still gives me goosebumps, and I still just want to say I'm deeply sorry you went through that.
yeah, but I learned a lot. I mean, in the sense that I mean, I think it's important to confront that stuff and to have to kind of deal with it because it exists. And sometimes I don't worry, but I sometimes think that now, because of the acceleration of social media and information and the ways in which we all connect, many of us live in very small bubbles. And it's easy to think that how you think is how everybody thinks, and that's obviously not the case. So for me, that was a good lesson really early on in my adult life, which, then I kept confronting as I grew up
Why would you turn away the option to have security outside your door?
because I didn't think that it should be necessary. I mean, really, the appropriate response would have been for them to offer like programming to everybody else, right? To learn about like gays and lesbians, as we were, well,
Yeah.
queer was what we called ourselves then. But, security was their solution. So I just didn't think it was necessary. And I had a pretty good group of friends and stuff, and it was almost the end of the year, so I didn't bother.
And did that change the course of what you studied? Like, did you like your dad died of Lou Gehrig's? You took that. Oh no, that wasn't for another. That wouldn't be for another year. That happened before your father passed away,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
2 years before. So it totally, I mean, it absolutely changed what I was going to study. Like I studied disability policy, and I did that in my doctorate as well. So it defined
Oh,
my academic focus, but then I also got very involved in the disability rights movement in Canada, both at the national level and at the provincial and local level. So I um, I ended up volunteering, excuse me, at a national disability rights organization in Ottawa and worked there for almost a decade on and off. And then but I supported a whole bunch of other organizations. And then I was chair of an organization called ARCH, ARCH, a disability law center. And it's a part of Legal Aid Ontario. It's a specialty law clinic, a part of Legal Aid Ontario. So I was the chair of that board for about a decade during my graduate and
oh.
doctorate. Yeah.
So, how did you end up in the public service? Like, is that while you were doing these things and going through graduate school and then doing your postdoc, was that what you were gonna, was that the plan
No,
that you wanted to work on? Like, no. Okay, what was the
no,
plan?
that wasn't the plan. So I didn't really know what I wanted to do, to be honest. I mean, when you're in, when you stay in school that long, you're surrounded by people who are obviously in that environment, and so you kind of it's almost path dependent, right? Like, oh, I guess I'll be a prof. So I that's kind of what I thought. I
Mm.
was teaching already at Ryerson, now been changed their name, but at in Toronto, and in my second year of my graduate degree, I met somebody who I ended up with for about 7.5 years. So he was about 10 years older than I was, and he was a national CBC journalist, so quite established and very well known. So I was in a whole other world during that period with a lot of journalists, and we traveled a lot. And so I moved to Toronto to do my doctorate in political science at U of T, and he stayed here in Ottawa, but then the following year followed, and he moved to Toronto. So we lived together there. And so for all of that time, I was very involved in the disability rights movement,
Mm.
and that was my area of focus. And I really did think that that's what I was going to do. So I ended up writing a book and publishing a number of academic articles with different professors, and I also got quite involved in policy research organizations. So none of them, well, the Caledon Institute is still around, but CPRN is another one that I worked with for a number of years. So I kind of had a really good network of people, and because of the book that I had published, I was invited to speak at a federal, provincial, territorial meeting on disability issues, and so I did that. And I was asked by a senior executive in the public service if I was ever interested in joining the public service, to which I said, absolutely not. and that was that. But then my relationship was kind of not great, and we moved back to Ottawa. And 2 weeks after we moved back to Ottawa, I met somebody else, and I ended up with that person for 23 years. And that was a big motivation for me to stay in Ottawa. And then
Oh,
I just decided to call this person and say, I thought about it again, and I think I would like to try it out. And that was really how I thought about it. It was just, I'll come in, I'll see how it
oh, you
goes.
called the person.
Yeah,
Sorry, you called the person who asked you about the public service.
yeah,
Oh, and so just like that.
yeah, yeah. And then I mean, I guess to your first set of questions, like as soon as I got into that environment, I quickly sussed it out and realized, what I wanted to do and not do, and I put my mind to it. And I ultimately accomplished what I had set out to accomplish 25 years ago. So, yeah.
What did you, because we're going to get to what you did. What did you at that time, 25 years ago or 26, when you first went in, stepped into the public service, your first role, and you looked at it and thought, I don't want to do this, what would that be?
What I don't want to do, I
Hmm.
didn't want to uh, waste my time doing busy work. And there's lots of busy work in the public service, which isn't to say it's not important, but that's not the kind of work that I wanted to do. So I knew that I wanted to be a policy person, and I knew that I wanted to be an executive. I knew that right away. And I also understood though that I needed to understand or get experience in two areas. One was I really wanted to understand how decision making happens in public service and in government, because that's, I had done a lot of work in my academic life. And so that meant that I needed to go to the places where those decisions are happening, and that's in cabinet for the most part. So that, I set myself an objective to work at the Privy Council office, which I did about 5 or 6 years after I joined the public service. But then the other thing that I realized very quickly was that I needed to understand how paper moves through the government, because there's a lot of it. And I realized that if you don't understand how all this stuff goes to where it's supposed to go so that the people who are supposed to be reading it get it and can have, the time to think about it. I wanted to figure out how that all worked. I knew I needed to figure that out pretty early in my career, which I did.
I mean, I've said this to you before, but I love how your brain works, that you thought that. Like, it would never occur to me. It would occur to me probably in a different way if I was in the public service, but I just love how you sum something up, like a huge concept. So, can you break that down for me? Okay, you want to understand how paper moves in the public service. Why?
Because, I mean, ultimately, what we do in the public service is two things, really. One is we provide advice to the government, to ministers, in various ways, in various forms. And then the other is we implement their decisions, right? So one is about helping to facilitate that decision making, and the other is then implementing those decisions. And so I was interested in the former, not so much the latter. That shifted as my career
Hmm.
evolved, but and so that's what I did. I worked in strategic policy organizations. In my first department was called HRDC then. It's the big employment department, and it's huge. And I was lucky. I I was fortunate in that I had senior people who invested in me, invested their time and
Hmm.
energy, and I had really helpful mentors. And so that set me up through my whole career. So I worked in a few different places in that department, and then I left and I worked at the Privy Council office for about 3.5 years. And that job and that experience catapulted my career. There's no question about that.
So, when you say I wanted to understand how paper moved in the public service, because I just love that sentence so much. You wanted to know how to have influence over decision making in the government, and you wanted to know exactly how you needed to do that in all aspects of it because the government is huge. There's so many departments, so many flippin' acronyms. You wanted to understand where you needed to be to have influence over the areas of government you were curious to have influence over.
Yeah, so there's lots of different departments, but they all have similar norms and
Right.
similar they're built kind of the same way, right? Because it all the parts need to talk to each other. This has shifted now with technology and stuff, but when I joined in 1999, I mean, paper and, folders was the way everything moved. So when you're providing advice to a senior, like to the deputy minister or to a minister, you're writing it down in a briefing note, always. And so that exercise involves lots of people and lots of paper, which ultimately gets boiled down to 4 or 5 or 6 pages. And then that will go up to the minister's office and to the minister. And often then there's a verbal briefing that complements it as well. So when you're working in the public service, understanding how to write those briefing notes and then how to communicate that information it's foundational to being successful. But there's lots of other paper, of course, from corporate stuff like HR and finance and right to parliamentary affairs and cabinet affairs, so supporting the institution of parliament, to like stakeholder stuff, like just talking to the partners. So there's lots of different tranches, and understanding where to invest your energy and time and why and when is really essential. Otherwise, you just drowned in paper. You can't. It's impossible to keep up. So about 2 years after I
Mm,
started, I there was a job that opened up, and I expressed interest and I got it, and it was to be the manager of the briefings and parliamentary affairs unit in the department. And all of my academic friends thought I was insane because I was like, "What are you doing?" Right? I'm like sitting there, literally making sure the dockets go the way who they're supposed to go to. But I did that very purposefully, and I built a whole other network through that job, which served me really
right.
well my whole career.
You're so smart.
No.
You are. What? Okay. Did you have a job in the public service that you didn't like?
Yes. More than one.
Oh, really? What's the one that stands out that you really wanted to get out of, and how long were you
So
there?
there's an expression among some of us in the public service, which is you can have a good file with a good boss, and that's a good file. Or you can have a good file with a shitty boss, and that's a shitty file. So my bad jobs were more about who I was working for, and one in particular, I just wasn't learning anything from this particular
Mm,
individual. So I always though would leave. Like I didn't ever really groan or, like threaten not to go. I would just leave. I would just go find another job and go. I
mm.
I would say like overall, I've had really amazing jobs. I've been really fortunate.
Why do you think some people stay in a job that they don't like? Because I just love how easy you said, I would just leave. Some people don't. They stay for a very long time.
Yeah, I mean, I think why do some people stay in relationships that are bad? It's hard to
It's another
it's
podcast.
yeah, it's hard to explain. I mean, I think part of it is just comfort, frankly, right? Like you complain a lot, but you know what you're complaining about. But I think
Yes.
the other one is fear. Like the public service, as you say, it's huge, and so you really need to become an entrepreneur when you're in the public service as a public servant if you're looking for another job. Like you need to build a network and you need to work the network, and so some people are good at that and some people are not so good at that. It just kind
Right.
of depends.
And you're good at that. Like you're a good connector.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm good at it. I'm tactical. Like
You're tactical.
I'm not somebody that goes to the, social.
You're on mute. You're on mute.
Oh, I hit the space bar, sorry. I always,
Adorable.
when the pandemic started, I would always forget that I was on mute,
Yeah.
and I would used to say that that's my staff loved that the most when I was on mute.
They're like, thank God
He's
he's
on
on
mute.
mute.
So I'm not really a social like chat kind of guy, right? Like I hate bars and all that kind of stuff. So I like to talk to people when there's a reason to talk to them, and then I'm done. I don't know why we get along.
How did we meet then? I know. I'm like, you couldn't resist these charms. Okay, switching it. What was your favorite job you had in all of your career?
I think my favorite job was when I was the Director General of Refugee Affairs at in the Immigration Department. So I was responsible for all of Canada's resettlement program. So that's when we identify refugees abroad through a partner like the UNHCR, and we process those folks abroad. And when they land in Canada, they're permanent residents of the country. So it's a big program. And then the other big program is it's called the asylum program. So that's people that present at a port of entry and they say that they need our protection. And so we offer them that protection. And then the determination if they're refugees happens through a quasi judicial body called the Immigration and Refugee Board. So I was the policy lead for those two big programs. And then there was a huge international component as well. So I had previous to that been in Paris a lot with the OECD, and this job brought me to Geneva quite a lot, and I represented Canada. I was often the head of delegation and negotiations with the UNHCR, and I had an amazing team. I built the organization up, and we had a huge kind of quote emergency, I guess, with a number of individuals who were coming across into Canada from Upper New York State into Quebec between ports of entry. So they were crossing, quote, illegally. And so that created a whole lot of internal work. And so I had a really great team. I had a great management team. I had a really good boss. I was traveling around the world. You and I were hanging out, and it was just a really good. It was like I would say that that was the peak of my career. I didn't know that at the time, but it was.
Mm. Do you think that landing there was like this full circle moment from what you studied?
I don't know. It's interesting. Like I didn't ever think about immigration at all, frankly, until like just before I went to the immigration department, to be honest. I mean, obviously I thought about it at PCO. I had that department as one of my responsibilities, but like when growing up, my entire high school, we were all Caucasian. Every single person, there was 1,000 students. We were all Caucasian. And so, diversity wasn't something that I really confronted a whole lot, frankly. And so that was why disability really appealed to me, and I learned a whole bunch of stuff like through that. But I also, my career developed, I leaned in on that stuff, and so I worked in areas that would expose me to those kinds of files. So for instance, at PCO, I worked on Indian Affairs files. And when I was finished at PCO, my next job actually was in the Indian Affairs department. I stayed there for a couple of years before I went to the immigration department. So I didn't ever think that I'd be doing that. But I think what was full circle was that my first job at the immigration department was to be the chief of staff to the deputy minister, so the most senior public servant who runs the CEO basically. So I was the his chief, and then a new deputy came in, and I was her chief. So I was in that job for almost 4 years, and it that was full circle because I had started my career by
Mm.
being the manager of the briefings and correspondence and whatever parliamentary affairs unit, and then I found myself at PCO, and then I found myself as chief of staff to a deputy, running a huge department with a really important mandate. So I was passionate and blindly willing to do anything. I would work like I don't know 60 or 70 hours a week. I did that I did that for 15 years, I think.
Yes, for as long as I've known you, you worked a lot. What do you think that Sunday night dinner would have been like with your dad in that
Mhm.
when you were in that role?
I don't know, actually. My dad and I had a difficult, not a difficult, but we had I was kind of scared of my dad, and my parents weren't, not that they weren't open to gays and lesbians, but they just didn't have any experience with it. I don't know that I would have come out with my father alive, actually. So it's hard for me to say, to be honest. I think, my mother always used to say, oh, your father would be so proud. So I certainly worked hard because there was a performative element in how I got recognition from my mom. And frankly, the public service is not dissimilar. I often say that the public service is a parent to many people in the public service, whether they realize it or not.
Ah, so
Not healthy.
interesting. Like, in what way? In what way exactly? Well, I mean, I think a lot of workplaces can be like that, but I mean, I've never been in the public service, so I never really thought of it in that way. I've owned my own business, so I think of it in terms of that. I'm like, yeah, that it can become like a family, and then it becomes quite toxic,
Yeah.
actually, when you set a a team up to operate as like a family. But the public service to me seems so big that how could you even do that? So I'm surprised to hear. So in what way does it resemble that?
So when you work in the public service, you have a lot of autonomy. It's a bit ironic in the sense that you're a part of this bureaucracy that's Weberian. There's a hierarchy, and you fit somewhere along the continuum. But you actually have a lot of autonomy, in particular with respect to your career. Like only you are responsible for your career. Nobody else really cares, frankly. So what that means is you develop a network of people who support you in the same way that you would I think in any job. Um, but who your boss is changes like quite frequently. When I think of the public service as a parent, what I mean by that is in the way that you have a relationship with your parents, like you get autonomy, but there are guardrails and you know what they are. And if you go outside those guardrails, then there can be consequences. And so the public service can both reward you and punish you
Mm.
in the way that a parent does. You're not going to lose your job for the most part, but you can be admonished in ways, and it's about your reputation in many respects. And so
Mm,
it can be very insidious, actually, is my view on that.
mm. Okay, so now you're looking at what about how many years do you have left, would you say, before you retire? Your best guess.
Because we're at a weird moment because the government in their budget in the fall announced an early retirement initiative, and I'm a part of the cohort that they're targeting. So I had planned to retire when I turned 58, and I just turned 55. Um,
No, you're
yeah,
42.
so I had a couple of years to go, but with this announcement, I've decided that I'm going to put my hand up. So if the budget passes and the program gets implemented, it's highly plausible that I'll retire in 2026.
What does that feel like?
It's weird, I've gone through like a whole series of like ways of thinking about it from, I can't do anything else except be a public servant to where I am now, which is I'm not that fussed about it. I mean, I'm incredibly
Mm,
privileged because I'll have financial security. I made a choice in part to join the public service because of the pension benefits, but it means that I've got some flexibility and some freedom to kind of focus on just the journey. And I think that though, like what's clear to me is that I'm not finished, right? Like I don't feel like this
mm,
is it, but I do feel like I need to kind of reframe how I think about myself and how I contribute and give myself a bit of a break. So I'm not so sure that I want to, become a consultant and, work in departments to helping them do X, Y, and Z that I would be expert at. I kind of want to just close that chapter and focus on other things that I'm interested in, which over the past, since the pandemic, actually, I've really started to explore. And I realized that there's lots of stuff I'm interested in and lots of stuff I can do. Because for most of my career, I didn't, like, I just focused on my career. It took up all my time and I exercised a lot, which I stopped doing.
I'm excited to see what you do on the other side of this. And not that there's another side. I think it's just a continuation of who we are. It's just like It's, I guess it's like any day passing. It just happens to be that maybe you'll retire. Retirement is on my mind, not because I'm anywhere close to it, but because I read this article. I think it was in the Atlantic. I can't remember. And it was this man who's 65 and he retired at 60. And he was like, I just kind of lived my life with that age in mind because that's the age I was told that we retire and this is how we retire. But he's like, then I sat at home for a couple of years and became redundant, even though I was at the top of my
Yeah.
game. I was a great leader. I had 30 plus years leading. And he was it doesn't matter what you do for a career, I suppose, but he was a top level executive. And he's like, and all of a sudden I'm out of the room. And the people that were the change makers, quote unquote, had been leading people for maybe, I don't know, 5 years. He's like, I read this article by this guy that was 28 and like, yeah, he had some really good points, but he was like, he was 28. Why am I, the 62-year-old with all of my like my knowledge and all this experience gained? Why am I at home watching daytime TV? So he's like, he's like, we need to shift how we think about retirement because when retirement was set up, we had laborious jobs where our bodies literally couldn't last much longer. And maybe we retired if we were lucky by 60 and lived for a couple of years. Like our bodies were pretty beaten down when it was a lot of like factory work and farming and what have you, more laborious jobs I'm thinking about. But anyway, I guess I hadn't thought of the definition of retirement and what we've made it until I read that because I hadn't really thought about my own retirement because I mean, my brain doesn't stop. I don't think I'll ever run out of things that I'll try and do.
Yeah.
So and it's so true, right? Like my mom retired because my dad got sick. So I think she'd still be working, maybe not in that job, but she retired and was like, oh, I don't know where I fit work in because she dug into a bunch of stuff that she was interested in. And the flip side, my dad got better and went back to work and didn't retire. Every year he'd be like, I might retire this year. And we're like, yeah, good luck. He didn't want to. He loved it. He was 71 when he died and he was still working before he got sick the final time. And he was like, I'm having so much fun at work. I'm mentoring all these new people coming up. I'm learning from them and they're learning from me. And I could just see him like he was beaming when he'd come home from work at that time. And it was, like obviously the privilege of not having to work to be able to afford to live. That's it. That's one thing. But to see the joy on his face, yeah, I'm curious about retirement in general now and what our plans are. Because you're just hitting your stride.
Yeah, no, for sure. And what you describe in terms of the senior executive and, being kind of pushed aside, like that's my experience as well. And it was not an easy transition, I'll say, but I've come to a place now where I can't force or I have no influence over what the current leadership is interested in terms of what kind of leadership competencies they're looking for. And if I'm not the package, then you have to just accept that, right? And I
Mhm.
a bunch of other stuff happened in my life during the pandemic and including my 23-year relationship ending. And through just working through all of those things, the other side, I would say that one of the things that defines me on this side, this other side now, is that I actually understand what it means to separate who you are from what you do. And I didn't understand that for
Mm.
just about all of my career. And it is not healthy. It's more than toxic. It's it's doing us such a disservice to yourself, right? Because like people can do so much more than what it is that we do in our jobs, but we exist in a labor market and in a culture that really values the profession, like what it is that you do. And often when you meet people, it's the first
Oh
thing they
yeah.
tell you, right? And so I think that the challenge for me going forward is to learn like how to honor my experience and knowledge in the public service as a part of my identity, but it's not my whole identity. In the same way that I've confronted this with my relationship, right? Like it was a huge part of my life, but it doesn't define me. It's contributed to who I am, and I really value and honor that. And so I feel the same way about the public service. I've practically like what I've decided to do towards the end of my career is I'm now working teaching at the public service, at the Canada School of Public Service. It's like our learning than a shop. And I really enjoy that. Like it's a bit what you described, right? Like giving back a bit. But I'm ready to go. And I see kind of the younger folks. When I was younger, I thought people 55, like get the hell out. Like it's time for you to move on. And I kind of feel that way too. Like it's like time for me to go. There's lots of
Mm.
people with new ideas and, in a world of AI and all that, like I think that they've grown up very, in a very different world than I had. So that's important. And that's how the public service renews itself. And so I'm ready to go and I go with full of thanks and no resentment or any of that kind of stuff. And what I'm going to do is less about how I'm going to get paid and more about what I want to contribute to. Like what do I want to actually like how do I want to make a difference or make a meaningful contribution? So I know that I want to be open rather than a fixed plan, right? And I know that I need to be intellectually engaged. I know that I need to be useful. I need to be making a contribution. And so it's not about the pace or the position. It's about how do I want this to unfold. And I don't need to have it all mapped out at all. I mean, I've got some anchors and some irons in the fire right now, but that's kind of the privilege of all of it.
Do you think this will be the first time you haven't had to or haven't thought to map out your future?
Yeah, for sure. And that's, for not just because of my retirement, but I've been very purposeful about that in the sense that I always used to, my analogy is that I never understood Tolkien, the author. I always was like, just throw the damn ring in the fire. Like, why are we walking through the forest like for so long, like for 500 pages? And somebody said to me, years later that Fraser, the point is not the fire, it's the journey. And I was like, oh. And the ring, right, is the symbol and who carries the ring and like how you learn about who's. I think that's obvious and intuitive for lots and lots of people, but it was not for me. I was about the like
Mm.
throwing the ring in the fire. And my mistake in life was that I accomplished all kinds of things over my career and through my life, but I never really stopped to take the time to just honor that and just for myself. And so I'm not like that anymore. That's what I now I'm focused on. And so that has very much, I think, helped me and conditioned me to think about my retirement. So I'm not freaked out by retiring and I won't have a title assistant deputy minister and I could care less, honestly. I really could care less. I'm
Mm.
more interested in I might work at a pet store. So
I
we'll
love it.
see. I don't know. See what happens.
If someone came to you in their first 5 years of their career and asked for some advice, just general advice, what's one thing you would tell them?
To listen and stop talking,
Oh, God, that's good.
especially men.
David, I didn't say it.
Yeah, my rule now is to count to 10. Just count to 10. Do you really need to say what you're
Mm.
thinking you need to say or send that email? Just count to 10. The second thing I would tell them is to think very deliberatively and purposefully about their constructed life in social media. Because
Yes.
as a public servant, I think everybody, but as a public servant in particular, it matters a lot. And I don't think that the younger folks, because they've grown up with it, are that critical about it, and that makes me a bit uneasy, frankly. And
Mm.
then I think the third thing I would tell people is to never forget that as a public servant, your job is to uphold the public trust and to be a steward. That's the job, like for every public servant. And I don't think everybody understands that, and it um it comes with a lot of responsibility, in my view. And I took it really seriously when I was in my career, and I still do. But I don't know that everybody feels the same way now. I sound like a fuddy-duddy, but things evolve. Things.
What would 8-year-old Fraser say about you now?
Oh my God.
What would he tell you to
What
do
grade
with
are
free
you in
time?
eight? When you're eight, are you in grade what? Six? Something like that?
I don't know.
Okay, what would he do? Okay, so I was in French immersion then, so I was mostly speaking French and in Montreal. I think, gosh, honestly, I don't. 8 is young.
Mhm.
I guess like the one thing, maybe this is, I don't know if this is like off topic or not, but when I was a kid that age, I used to have these days that I didn't want to go to school, and I used to call them mad at the world days. And I would tell my mom that, and she would let me stay home, and I would stay in my room, and I would write usually, and I would spend the whole day writing, and then I would emerge, and I would feel like I had figured out whatever it was that was troubling me, and I was like that my whole life, my whole adult life, until quite recently actually, and then I was diagnosed with ADHD, and I was diagnosed with clinical depression. And so 8-year-old Fraser was depressed and didn't know how to deal with it and fumbled my way through. And certainly my parents, that was never even on the radar screen, I don't think. It was the 70s. But I think that had it been known and understood and, treated and I had strategies, I think my career, I think my happiness and my level of content would have been more stable.
And now that you know, is it?
Yeah, it is because I look after myself and and that means I say no more than I say yes. I'm anemic as well, so it means that I don't apologize if I'm tired and my my family, we're all kind of get up and go, like always moving, and I really notice it when I'm with my siblings. Like they're always like running around, and I'm just not like that anymore. And I'm not. I used to feel guilty about it, and I don't at all anymore.
Mm.
I'm also really enjoying being single, to be honest. Like
Mm.
I've been a serial monogamist my whole life. Like I really have never lived alone. So I am now, and I really like I really enjoy it actually. Like I like the space and the time that I have.
Nice. I love that. I mean, I'm going to invade your space tonight because you're making me
I have to go buy
dinner.
what we're having.
But then I'll leave early because I like to go home and go to bed early, and then you can have your space back.
As long as I get to eat what we made.
Thanks for sharing everything with me. I really appreciate
I don't know
you.
if it was gobbledygook. So let me finish by saying
Yes.
that I think that anybody who's at any kind of transition point, it doesn't have to be to retirement, but like wherever, if you're moving from one thing to the other, there's that change transition kind of dynamic. I think that like the first thing you have to do is have gratitude for what was, like what you had done, and really kind of honor that.
Mm,
Take time to really think about that. And then the second thing is that you need to be curious about what's next. And that means that you don't have it all figured out. And that's okay. It's okay to be not solid on what it all is, because that means you're going to be curious about what it is. And then there has to be something that has continuity between those temporal periods, or between those chapters, the other side. For me, it's about the continuity of purpose and the continuity of continuing to make a contribution in small ways to change things, to make things better. Like
mm.
I have this little thing I always say to myself, that everything I want to touch, I want it to be better than it was before I touched it. And I've not been always successful, but that's usually the way that I approach stuff. And if I don't feel that, then I don't take it on.
It's really beautiful. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you.
I love you.
Bye.
But don't
Oh yeah,
hang
don't hang
up.
up because we have to wait for the thing to upload, everybody.